Are you a parent or caregiver seeking to better support your autistic loved one struggling with an eating disorder? Well, I have some exciting news for you. Imagine this, a community where you can learn from autistic individuals with lived experience of an eating disorder and connect with other parents in the same boat as you in real time. Something I've learned through working with many parents through one-on-one coaching is that they want guidance from people with lived experience, but they also want a community of other parents that are desperate to support their autistic child through recovery from an eating disorder. So, me being the passionate problem solver I am, I figured, why not bring my own perspective of autistic-friendly eating disorder recovery together with your parental lived experience to create a program that both supports and empowers caregivers to support their autistic loved ones struggling with eating disorders. I'm thinking live group coaching calls with 24/7 access to an autistically ED-free community and tons more research, resources, and guest experts to help you understand how you can best support your autistic child to full recovery from an eating disorder. But here's the deal. I will only launch this program if there's enough genuine interest, meaning your voice matters. That being said, if you are interested in learning more about this program and potentially joining other parents just like you, please sign up for the waitlist at livelabelfree.com/group. So that's livelabelfree.com/group. I cannot wait to embark on this empowering journey with you and other superhero parents out there. And now, let's get back to today's episode.
Gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be around the corner soon.
Welcome to Live Label Free, the podcast, where you'll learn to let go of limiting labels and embrace your unique brain. As my mom says so beautifully in her song,
Fear is a heavy load to carry.
which is why on this podcast, you'll learn the scientific links between neurodiversity and eating disorders, giving you a deeper understanding of how you can face your fears and become truly free. Together, you and me, we will keep putting
One foot in front of the other.
Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. I'm your host, Livia Sara, and today I am joined by George Muniz Gund. Is that correct pronunciation? Okay, perfect. A Brazilian-American autistic and ADHD actor, neurodiversity acceptance and disability justice advocate, host of the Unpacking Neuroqueerness podcast, and also the writer behind the blog Different Not Broken. Like me, George believes there is nothing more powerful than sharing and listening to the lived experiences of neurodivergent individuals. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Olivia. It's a pleasure to come on. Thanks for having me on. And I had a really great time with talking with you on my podcast a couple months ago. So I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Yeah. Right before we started recording, I was telling George that my whole life feels like chaos right now. Because I just moved to Boston a month ago, and when I was on George's podcast, last 3 months ago, I was in LA, so we were in the same time zone, and now we're not. And this is actually the first podcast I'm recording, like being back on my podcast because I took a little break. So you're gonna be number one of whatever the next season is. So yeah, I'm super excited to kind of dive into, what it was like for you growing up as a neurodivergent person, how that impacted your relationship with food, because that's kind of everything we talk about on this podcast. So yeah, that being said, can you kind of just tell our audience, who are you and when/how did you discover that you are neurodivergent?
Sure, yeah. So I am half Brazilian, half American. I was born in Brazil, actually. My mom's family is from Brazil and my dad's family is from the US.
Cool.
Yeah, so basically like I was born in Brazil, but with actually when I was 6 months old, we all moved to San Francisco because my dad was born and raised in San Francisco. And so that's where I actually lived here till I was about 9 years old, and then I went back to Brazil till I was 18, and then I came back here once I turned 18.
If I may interrupt, we have very similar stories because I was born in the Netherlands. We moved to Boston when I was 6 months old, lived in Boston till I was 15, moved back to the Netherlands, lived there till I was 20, and then I moved back to the US by myself.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
that we do have similar stories.
yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah, no, so I guess I started noticing early on. So like I went to like preschool, I think up to like second or third grade here.
Mhm.
And I started noticing early on like social differences. Like I just noticed that okay, so I guess the first things that came up were before the social stuff
Yeah.
was like I had some neuromotor difficulties
Mhm.
and I also had some speech delays. And I do remember having to do speech therapy and then a little bit of like, I guess it was like occupational therapy or it was like
Yeah.
physical therapy. But I remember my parents like we couldn't, I mean, it was the 90s and everything, and we couldn't get a diagnosis. Like I think I might have gotten like a diagnosis for impaired neuromotor function, and I can't remember, but there was something else. I think my mom told me that I was misdiagnosed early on. Um, so no one knew that I was autistic, basically. We just knew that I had like some speech differences and things.
Right.
Um, but then I started noticing socially, like in school, as I started attending school in person, I noticed that it was hard for me to connect with the other kids.
Yeah.
I only later came to hear this described as like a difference in language, almost like a difference in language, like the neurotypical language and the neurodivergent
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
And we just weren't speaking the same language. Like I didn't really, it was hard for me to connect. Like there was just, and I didn't even have any idea of what it was. It just felt like it was just like there was this block or something.
Right.
And I actually made one good friend. Their name is Lisa. And we got along very well. Like, we were lucky to like be in that same cohort. And then I just remember we started like really connecting. And it's interesting because I later came to realize that Lisa was also autistic. Like we both later
Yeah.
came to realize that we were autistic. Like we both got diagnosed years and years later. It actually like that was so early, like early 2000s. That was so 2003 is when I moved back to Brazil for my teenage years.
Mhm.
And you know, it was we didn't have like texting or anything like
Right.
that.
I remember
Yeah.
the iPhone came out when I was like 10, and I was so jealous because like it was like the first iPhone. Like when we look at it now, we're like ancient. But I remember it was like the touch screen, and my first phone was a flip phone. No, it wasn't a flip phone. It was one of those phones that like had the keyboard that like slid out, and I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. And then
Yeah.
when the iPhone came out, I initially was hesitant because I didn't like the idea that you would have a keyboard on the screen. But now it's, what everybody knows that like we don't even have Blackberries anymore. So it's crazy actually how quickly the technology has just like taken off.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the book I'm recording right now about how to beat extreme hunger, I talk about the how dangerous it is to use like to basically put your health, quote unquote, into the hands of like a health professional that says like this is how much you should weigh based on your BMI and all that stuff. And I have a sentence in there that's like you can't let any health professional, like you can't let any person or thing, which is worth mentioning with like the AI BMI calorie calculators. Like it's so like we are basically giving power to robots. Like it's crazy. But yeah, tangent. Technology tangent. Go on.
I like tangents. Yeah, so basically like that's I guess around the same time that I realized like my social differences, like when I was young, I started realizing that I had aversions to certain foods.
hmm
Like particularly for me, it was like rough texture vegetables.
hmm
Um, and
How
like
do
I
you
don't
define a rough texture vegetable?
I guess like lettuce for me, I don't know, like because I don't know, like the lettuce that's like there's this lettuce that's like really rough. I don't know, like I don't know if that would be the right way to describe it, but certain foods like lettuce and like cucumbers, like olives, I don't know, and I feel like each autistic person has like different food aversions, like I've realized, but I noticed that there were just a lot of things that I couldn't eat that were like sense that I later came to realize that it was sensory related, but all I
Yeah.
knew at the time is that it wasn't even always about taste because I feel like people would
Uh-huh.
always assume that I didn't like something because of the taste, but
Right.
sometimes it's like the texture or the temperature even or
Oh,
something.
totally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, even like that's why with the lettuce, like I feel like it isn't even the lettuce being rough. It's just the way that it feels when it enters your mouth. It's just like this is not agreeing with me. And I feel like, these like different senses that we talk about, like taste, texture, temperature, like I feel like that doesn't even encompass the extent to which we experience it. And that's why these like sensory sensitivities around food are so misunderstood because we cannot comprehend them like as outsiders. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's really hard to because I feel like I can't even always narrow it down to like, oh, it's because of the taste, it's because of the texture. Sometimes it's
Right.
like a combination
Totally.
and sometimes it's just like, yeah, like I can't describe it. Like I can't eat this or it'll make me gag. And then like
Yeah.
people will like think I'm being dramatic or whatever, or they think that I don't like something, or they think that it's just because I don't want to eat vegetables because vegetables are healthy. And it's like I would always try to explain like that there are vegetables that I do eat that I like eating. Like for
Right.
instance, I mean not everyone, but like broccoli, asparagus, spinach, like there's some vegetables that I enjoy. And
Right.
so I would always like, I remember I kind of memorized like a little monologue of like those vegetables. And I would spit those out because I would just like have it ready, like when people accused me of just being against vegetables or whatever.
But you would spit them out even though you liked them.
No, no, I
I'm just
mean,
kidding. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
I'm making fun of your word choice. No, that was mean. That was mean. Um, no, but yeah, that is, so recognizable, resonant with me in terms of when I had my eating disorder and people like accused me of like not eating because I wasn't really eating much. Well, I was actually eating like 2,000 calories a day, but like for my specific body and metabolism, that was like basically equivalent to eating like 200 calories a day. Um, and I feel like we may have talked about like metabolism in a previous conversation, but maybe that's just me. But I remember, when
Talked
people would
about it on my podcast
accuse
a
me
little
of
bit.
things, I would have all these things, like all these basically just like one-liners, like ready, like be like, okay, if you say that thing, well, then I have A to apply to, and then I have B to apply to, and then I have this whole laundry list of like auto responders basically to specific threats or complaints or whatever. So I feel like that's very universal among the autistic population because we often are called out for things that really don't need calling out, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, no, it was tough like getting that like criticism like oh, you should, and the guilt and like, oh, you should eat, like I should eat this, like because like it would always make me nervous, like when other people would make something and it had something in it that I couldn't eat, because
Yeah,
then it's like a whole thing, like they'll get offended, and then like with me, with like being really sensitive too, like I don't want them to get offended, but then it's
right.
like I can eat this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that again resonates with me in like a different capacity. Like when I had my eating disorder, I'm not like so much anymore, but I used to be a huge people pleaser. Like I would like if someone like didn't agree with me, I'd be like, okay, they hate me. I have evidence they hate me. Or like, if someone wouldn't reply to me immediately, they hate me. It was always they hate me, they hate me, they hate me. Um, and when I had my eating disorder, like obviously I just didn't eat anything that anyone else made anymore just because I didn't trust them. And I think especially when my family did this thing called family-based therapy, FBT, also known as the Maudsley method, which is like the golden standard evidence-based treatment for eating disorders. But for autistic people, especially autistic people with demand avoidance, FBT is the most harmful, most traumatizing thing you can do to a kid because you're taking away their autonomy. And in the sense, the eating disorder itself is a way to have autonomy. It's a way to have control, right? So when people, even my parents would make stuff, I did not trust them because I read things online, like parent forums, like if you have a kid with an eating disorder, you gotta like sneak in extra butter and extra cream and get in all the extra calories without them noticing. But I'm like my parents used to call me princess on the pea or something. Like if there was like one drop of oil in my rice or whatever, I would notice it. And people would be like, "How does she notice it?" But like I would notice it. And again, I think autistic people were so hypersensitive, we're so hyper aware. We notice everything and anything because essentially I feel like it's an adaptive mechanism to protect ourselves from potential threats. Because when you were so hyper alert, like if you were in the forest and you heard a crack of a branch, like danger. Like and if you had that hyper awareness and that hyper alertness and you saw and heard everything, that would actually help you survive. So in that sense, I feel like autism, like and autistic behaviors, which are traditionally considered like problematic, I feel like it would be so much more productive if we as a society started shifting the narrative to the adaptive behaviors. Because ultimately, every autistic behavior, when you look at it from that adaptive lens, we can see, wow, this is actually a way for them to feel safe and to regulate themselves.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of getting that from, anyways, the reason why I'm sharing this story in response to what you were saying is that, I was a people pleaser, but I didn't want to eat what other people made. So when we went anywhere, I was like, I'm not eating this. And people would be like, no, but Livia, like I made it because it's your favorite. Like they would make mac and cheese, like especially for me, because I was, the picky eater who only ate mac and cheese. But when I got my eating disorder, it was mac and cheese went out the window. It was like now I had to have my steamed brown rice and grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, and that was it. And I felt so conflicted because I wanted to like show them my appreciation by eating what they had made for me. But at the same time, I was like, no, like I can't eat that because it's quote unquote unhealthy and doesn't fit in my perfect diet plan. So yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to that, like being conflicted.
Yeah. I was just remembering to, I was thinking about like having like same foods and safe foods,
Yeah.
and how that would be like looked down on sometimes too, like
Hmm.
because of like how society tells us that we need to have a varied diet, like I don't know, to like eat like, because I know it's important to eat like different like macronutrients, but like if there's a dish that I like that has all these like nutrients that I need, it's like it shouldn't matter. I feel like I never really understood the concept of like you can't have the same dish every day or almost every day, because what if it's what works for you, and if it's
Right.
like if it's doing the job of fueling your body with what you need to fuel your body, then I feel like it should be okay. Like I don't know, that's another thing that that would always confuse me a lot about society, like about like this need for like for variety, like this aversion to sameness or to like the routine. And then it wasn't really until I started learning about like same foods and safe foods and like really when I entered the neurodiversity world that I started like understanding a lot of these things and why they bothered me. And you were also talking about like when you could notice that
Mhm.
like it would
The
one
princess
little
and the
drop.
pea. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can totally do that. It's like with like if a restaurant changes this dish and it's just one small little change, I can
Right.
notice. And if like I don't know if there's like a snack or a cookie or something that I like and it changes.
New and improved recipe.
Yeah, I'm like,
No.
no,
Right.
no.
I feel like that's that, meme that goes around of like an autistic's worst nightmare when you say food gets a new and improved recipe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that'll pretty much screw you up. Yeah, when we actually moved to the Netherlands in 2015, I mean, I had like all my foods that I was like used to eating here in the US, and I remember like my mom would spend like hundreds of dollars to get like specific items shipped overseas because I had an eating disorder. Like she wanted me to eat, and I was so particular that like I had that specific cereal from that specific brand that they did not have in Europe. That again, she would spend like so much money on shipping costs just for me to eat that. And eventually, like, I got over that also by like just gaining flexibility throughout my eating disorder, but I mean, through recovery. But I mean, I still, when I go to the grocery store, I pretty much buy the same stuff. Like, I like to alternate like between vegetables and produce sometimes and like just meals, I guess, because also being ADHD, I know that if I eat the same thing every single day, I'm going to get like burnt out on it, and like that scares me more because I'm like, oh no, like what's gonna come in the place? So I do like rotate, but it's usually rotating between the same stuff. Um, and I think with the variety, it's I have kind of like mixed thoughts on that because it is important to eat variety just because like research has shown, studies have shown that, the more variety you eat, the more diverse your like gut microbiome is, and the more resilient your gut would be to, potential like bacterial infections, whatever, and ultimately strengthening your immune system. But it's all about the context of an individual's life. Like variety can be important, and at the same time, if you're having such a hard time having variety because you need to eat the same foods, the safe foods, like you have to choose at one point which one is more important. And I think, that's kind of where even like the financial discussion can come in, like, of like eating healthy. Well, if you're like a single mom and have 4 kids and are working like a job that's like barely allowing you to pay your bills each month, like it is not feasible for you to feed your kids like a 5-star like gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, plant-based, organic meal every night because that would totally like make you go broke, right? So in that case, kind of like the autistic case, which one is more important? That you have food on the table, that you're getting nourishment, or that you're eating this variety of foods, right? So I think again, they're both important, but life is all about making trade-offs. And in that sense, you do have to outweigh, no pun intended, like which trade-off am I willing to make to maintain my sanity right now? Have you listened to my free audio training yet? If not, you have got to get your booty over to my website right now and download the audio training, 3 Steps to Recovery from an Eating Disorder as an Autistic Person. If there is one question I get asked the most when it comes to autism and eating disorders, it's whether or not I believe it's harder for an autistic person to recover from an eating disorder. The fact that this is such a common question is really no surprise, as autistic traits are often the root cause of the disordered eating behaviors. I believe my own eating disorder was simply a manifestation of my autism. Obsessive interests, the need for predictability and routine, difficulty with change, being sensitive. As soon as you mix food and exercise into this autistic assemblage of traits, it's literally a recipe for an eating disorder. So then how does an autistic individual approach recovery from an eating disorder? Well, that is exactly what you will learn in my free audio training. While listening, you'll be guided through 3 simple steps to give you the clarity and confidence you need to use your autism to your advantage in recovery. It's like having a private coaching session with me on demand. To listen to the free training, all you have to do is head over to livelabelfree.com/free-audio training, and you'll be on your way to learning the skills to fully recover from an eating disorder as an autistic person. Achieving a state of full recovery from an eating disorder will be a different journey than for someone who is not autistic, but that doesn't mean it has to be harder. I did it, which means you can too. Now, let's get back to today's episode. So like even for me, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm in a period of burnout, I cannot cook. I cannot go and roast veggies and meal prep for the week. No, I'm going to be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for dinner every night, every day until I feel better. And in that moment I can say, oh my God, I'm so bad. I should be eating variety. In that moment, at that moment in time, I need to focus on recharging, and any energy put into cooking or cleaning or any of this stuff that they say you should do, that would prevent me from doing what I know in my heart I need to do. And I think, truly unmasking as an autistic person comes down to, leaning into that heart feeling. Because I believe that, even though we struggle with interoception, sometimes I believe that us autistic people have such a strong gut instinct. If I feel something in my heart, this is right, this is what I know I need to do, that is unwavering. I know I need to do that thing. And I think, again, when you can fully trust that, that's when you unlock the full spectrum of your autistic gift. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, or if you have any kind of experiences in your life where you truly felt that to be true.
You mean more would it be specifically related to food or just?
Oh, it can be anything. It can be anything.
Okay.
I can give an example from my life. It was, deciding not to go to college and deciding to pursue Live Label Free and saying, screw college, screw the education system that is not neurodiversity friendly, which I know is something you talk about a lot. I'm going to build my own business. Especially in the Netherlands, a very traditional country, you gotta do your school, you gotta do this, you gotta do your 9 to 5, then you gotta, that's the way there was so much judgment on me and my decision and saying, I'm gonna start this business, I'm gonna move to the US. And I remember so often that question, okay, well, what's your real job? How are you gonna earn money? How are you gonna pay your bills? As if, the only way to pay your bills was to go to law school and get some degree and work until you're 65, and then finally you can live your life when you're too old to live it. No offense to anyone who's over 65. I mean, you still have a lot of years left, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now yes, I can certainly relate to that. I also decided to not finish the traditional college route.
Uh-huh.
I did a year or two, and I also realized how unfriendly the education system is for neurodivergent people, and it just wasn't working for me. And then I realized part of that is that ADHD autistic thing of having really strong special interests in certain subjects and really wanting to study the heck out of those subjects and doing well in those subjects. But then you have to take all this other stuff.
Right, that you're not interested in.
That
and
you're
if you're
not interested in.
And if you're not interested, it doesn't work.
And
it just doesn't go.
Exactly. And that's where I hit a roadblock, is that I ended up taking all the classes that I really liked, that I really wanted to take early on. And then eventually I got to a point where I would have a semester that I had to take like 3 classes or 4 classes that I didn't like, and then I would get to take one class that I liked. And
Right.
it just like, and then it became like, it just didn't work for my brain. It was like,
Right.
I'm not like, I'm forcing myself to go to class every morning, and it's not even something that I like. And it was a little frustrating to me too, because it was like, when I was in grade school, I had similar kind of problems,
Yeah.
and like, and people would always tell me, like, when you get to college, it'll be different because you get to study what you
Yeah.
like.
Right.
And then I
Right.
get there and I'm like, "Ugh," but it's just no.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, even in high school, I just remember the frustration of, like, I just remember really specifically like biology class, and we were learning about like cells and DNA and like genetics and, all of that stuff, which I find super interesting. And actually recently finished reading a book called The Gene. And it's basically about the history of genetics. And not surprisingly, like all of the people that basically contributed to what we know about genetics today, all autistic. Like duh. But I remember just we were learning about that and I was fascinated and I really wanted to like understand, like cell division and like how the DNA gets mutated and like, how the genes are mutated and like when the genes like cross over and all that. But then we would already be going on to like the next subject about like dinosaurs or evolution. I'd be like, wait, but we like just barely scratched the surface of this. And then they'd be like, yep, well, that's the curriculum. And I'd be like, no, like we need to go deep here.
no, yeah.
And it would just, but of course, like the teachers couldn't do anything about it because they have this curriculum that they have to follow. But I think that's part of the reason why school can be so hard for autistic people is like when we do find something we're interested in, we're punished. And then because we can't move on, and then we get a bad grade on the next thing. And then it's like, see, you're incompetent. But it's like you're trying to force competence in an area that we don't even want to be competent in, which again, it makes no sense that how we are raising, I'm saying our kids like I'm a parent, but like how we're raising kids and just like forcing our generations to do school and learn things we don't want to learn. Like there's no benefit to society at large by forcing people to do things they don't want to do. I mean, if we like transform the education system and we stop testing people like with exams and that kind of stuff, and we education almost became like an outlet of each individual's like creative, unique interests and passions. I truly believe like that would revolutionize the world at large because people would be able to like very early on be able to develop these skills that most people learn much later because only then are they free to do the job they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Like I think it was that, now everything's clicking more for me. Like it was so powerful to be able to let go of what the expectation was and allow
Yeah.
myself to learn my way and to just like I decided like I had been pursuing this career as I had been studying to be a meteorologist.
Uh-huh.
And like I still really like weather, but then it wasn't I had to acknowledge to myself that I wasn't like abandoning my interest to weather and like betraying
Yeah.
everyone that I had told that I was gonna study weather.
Yeah.
And I actually, I always had like this other strong passion for acting, and I
Mm-hmm.
had taken acting classes and like I'd done like a play in when I was a kid before,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked it, and I remember it was really powerful to like make that decision and just once I said no, I have this gut feeling this is what I need to do. This is the right way. I'm gonna do it my way. And I was lucky that I was able to get into this 2-year program, like acting school in the Bay Area, and met a lot of great people through it, and
Mm-hmm.
really like and then really like was able to like go with that and finish that, and that's what I really liked, and that's where what I really wanted. And we were like studying, like we were building brick to brick, but I think it was really fit for my brain because it is like this brick to brick training, and it's like it's the same technique, but you're building and evolving, and it's like, but it's not like you're radically changing to a completely different subject. It's like always, I don't know.
Yeah, you're building on what you've previously learned, and you keep building on that, and by building on that, you basically go into these new pathways that you can only go into once you've laid the foundation. Am I
Yes.
reflecting? Yeah, I mean, what you said, like I started learning what I wanted to learn, and like that's just reminding me so much of my own journey as being an entrepreneur. And basically saying, I'm not going to have someone else teach me. I'm going to learn it myself because that's the way I learn. That's very independent. I mean, I was running like lemonade stands when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and to this day, my dad says, that was the start of your entrepreneurial journey. That was you being a leader and basically saying, I'm going to do this. No one can tell me otherwise. And yeah, I always say, when people ask me, like, how did you publish your book? Like, how did you start a business? How did you do this? How did you get clients? It's like, no one taught me. Like, I read all the books. Like, I did my own research. I did courses. I wanted to figure it out. And I was so adamant and passionate and determined to figure it out that I did. And I feel like, again, figuring it out yourself is the only true way to figure anything out. Because like it's like telling a kid like, okay, if I tell you exactly how to read, you'll be able to read. It's like that's not how you learn to read. You learn to read by first looking at the page and being like, what the fuck? Like what are all these random formations on this page? Like I can't do this. But once you are able to read and you learn to read and you make mistakes and then you are corrected, because of course we all need guides. I'm not saying I did all of this by myself. I've had coaches and mentors, and many of my mentors have been authors of my favorite books, right? I mean, what I have learned just through reading, I mean, I think we totally underestimate the power of books. And that's why I'm so passionate about being an author and writing is that, the timeless wisdom, the ancient wisdom. I'm reading a lot about like Zen Buddhism now and the philosophical stuff. And I mean, although it was written hundreds of years ago, it is still so perhaps even more relevant today in this world of like overstimulation, like finding peace and finding purpose and meaning amongst the chaos. That has really been helping me a lot lately with my own mental anxieties and existential angst. But yeah, kind of long story short, I think when we go on this path, especially as autistic people that are so determined and once we find our thing, we're so passionate about it, we become so intelligent. We learn so much because we open our mind and we immerse ourselves to go on this journey of discovery and basically setting ourselves up to be surprised almost. Like I don't know what the future holds, but like I'm willing to learn what it holds, and I'm gonna be willing to keep building on that, like you said with the bricks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like that whole training, like the whole journey is also like it was more, where I feel like where the like my advocacy and podcasting side really took off was after I finished the training,
Mhm.
because then that's when I could like put those like what everything I had absorbed, I
Right.
could like put that to work in my own way.
Yeah.
Um, that was really awesome because like the ending of the training was basically like we started talking about like how to market ourselves in the acting world and like how to tell our
Yeah.
story and everything. And then that's what like I remember one of the main things that like because we had one of our last exercises was like a mock agent interview, and we would like talk about ourselves. And one of the things that I chose to focus more on was the like me being autistic, and I was just
Hmm.
really like stepping more into that and really reading more about neurodiversity and like all these things that like this information I hadn't been given when I got my diagnosis itself, which had been like 12 years already at that point.
Right.
But then learning like I don't know, the thing with foods and the thing with this and the thing with that, and then like that's what led me to like start. And it was like because you talked a lot about like reading from other people and like
Yeah.
what's like already been written and said,
Hmm.
even like from very ancient times, that's still
Yeah.
relevant
Right.
today. And so, but like, just it was like when I started reading from other neurodivergent people online that I started having all these things I wanted to write and I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So that's when I started my blog, and then that's when I started the podcast. And I remember, and then this ties in also to like doing things our own way and like trusting our
Yeah.
gut
Trusting
and
our
that,
gut. Yeah.
yeah, and which is coincidentally like another big teaching from the training, which was also like a lot of it was like trusting our gut. And but it was like it was really like I'm gonna do it my own way. And because I remember I had people around me that would say, "Oh no, but you should do it this way. You should have it like this. You should have it like that because such and such podcaster because
Yeah.
because they do it like this, and so you should study because and then kind of like I get it that it's good to have like obviously like I had other podcasts that I liked that kind of
Right.
inspired me, but I still wanted to do my own thing. And I feel like a lot of people get caught in these constructs of like, oh, you need to do it like so and so is successful, so that's like the right way to do it.
Totally.
And that would
Yeah.
be like,
No, if I may branch off, that totally reminds me of my approach to books. I remember when I said, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to self-publish it and I'm going to market it myself and I'm not going to hire an agent and I'm not going to get a publisher. I'm going to do it all myself. I remember my mom was like, no, but Olivia, like, no one's going to know about your book. Like, you need a publisher. Like, you need a big publisher. You need someone to, like, get your book out there. And I was like, no, I'm going to figure this out. And because I think a huge part of the reason why I chose to self-publish was because, again, I am a huge, like, autonomy freak. I need control. I need agency. I need full power over my creations, especially if it's as something as valuable as a book that you write. I was like, if I write off my rights to a publisher, like it's not mine anymore. And like that was not going to happen. And like looking back now, I mean, I'm so happy that I went the self-publishing route because it forced me to learn every single in and out of what happens behind the scenes of publishing a book. And my like knowledge around that is so rich now. Like I feel like enriched as a person by going on that journey because now I feel so much more confident in like writing future books. Also because I'm completely independent and I'm not reliant on an editor who successfully pitches my book or I'm not reliant on a publisher rejecting my manuscript. Like I get to decide to put it out there. And I think that's what I love so much about your podcast and your blog is you get to decide I'm putting this out there and no one can stop you. So
yes,
that
yeah.
being said, where can people find you and your blog and your podcast? Yeah, just tell us all what they're called, and I'll make sure to drop all the show all the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So my podcast is called Unpacking Neuroqueerness. You can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And my blog is www.differentnotbroken1293.com. Although I will say I'm actually in the process of transitioning to a website. I have a friend that actually works with website design, and she's helping me build my own website.
Cool,
And
because I was
so
gonna say if you don't have that friend, I actually build websites too. So
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, anyways, I'm gonna have a website soon, and that's gonna have like all my posts on there too. But in the
cool.
meantime, it's different, not broken 1293.
So www.differentnotbroken1293.com.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
cool. Yeah, and I'll leave, like I said, leave all the links in the show notes. George, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to tell our audience or some words of timeless wisdom that they can take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I just think, like Livia said earlier, listening to the lived experiences of neurodivergent people, like when it comes to neurodiversity or whatever group of people you want to learn more about.
Yeah.
It's so important to like listen to lived experiences and like different podcasts and books and articles, and like there's so many of those resources out there, and it's such a shame that like they're usually not shown in the mainstream world. Like you
Yeah.
have to do a lot of digging, and
Yeah.
I just wish that like the lived experience perspective were like more out there. And I think that's why, you know, podcasts like this one and like mine and like so many others are so great. And
Yeah.
so yes, remember that it's okay to do things your own way. It's
Yeah.
okay to challenge these norms and molds. And like, I feel like it's just so liberating, because another thing, like when you were talking about, you know, like challenging like the way that we're told like we're supposed to do it. Like another thing that popped up for me was not just my podcast, but like I did this little short film. I wrote this little short film last year, and I did it with some friends of mine. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember getting feedback, a lot of like, oh, well, you need to pay attention to like the trends and what people are watching. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, but I really, and no, because the story, because people won't like the same kind of thing. Because you were talking about how your mom said, oh, but no one will
Yeah, no
see
one's
it.
gonna know about it. And like I
And
remember when I released Rainbow Girl, it was like on the Amazon #1 new release for like a week. And I was like, no one's gonna know about it. Like I've built an audience through my podcast and Instagram, like, and I think it's so for anyone listening who's like interested in publishing a book, this idea that your publisher is going to market the book for you is complete bullshit. Like I know a lot of author friends now who actually became indie authors, so independent authors, after like having been traditionally published, and they say they decided to become independent publishers because they hated all of the kind of like bits and bobs and ultimatums that came with, you know, having a contract with a big publisher. So
yeah,
anyways, I feel like I one of my book ideas is actually it's going to be on how to write and publish a book like specifically for autistic people because I know a lot of autistic people that want to write books and publish
yeah.
them, but it's intimidating, right? If you've never done it before. So, anyways, yeah, turning my lived experience
That's
into a message.
Yeah, that's just so awesome that you mentioned this, because I thought of asking you this today, because this
Yay.
morning I was just thinking about how you know, you told me that you're working on another audiobook and
Yeah,
everything. And I'm like, you know, like I was inspired with the blogs and the podcasts, and now I feel like I'm kind of getting inspired with like books,
yeah,
and like, you know, as yours as an example, like you writing. And then I'm like, you know, I kind of like I could see myself writing a book, but then that's exactly what popped in my head was like, oh no,
yeah,
like I don't want to have to like work with a publisher or whatever.
right,
I don't want to like end up being like locked into these
right. In the
norms.
contract, yeah.
Yeah. And I was gonna ask you exactly that, about like how you went about like publishing your book. So it's really awesome that you
Yay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I wish I could give you like a quick answer, but I mean, I like I said, I could write a whole book. I'm planning on initially like launching a course because I feel like that's going to be helpful for people to like illustrate step by step like how to do it. But now you've like given me extra motivation to like actually do it because there's always that part of me when I get like ideas for new projects. I'm currently actually creating a course for healing digestive issues as autistic person, which I know is gonna
I can
be
relate
good.
to that. Yeah.
Um, but like then when I had this idea for the course of like how to self-publish, like write and self-publish a book, I was like, well, no, what if no one wants that? But like now this conversation, I mean, I'm like, if you want it, it means that there's other people that probably want it too. So thank you for inspiring me. And yeah, I feel like I can't believe like the hour went up by so
I
hour
know, it
went
was
by
so
so
fast.
quickly. Yeah, I feel like we could talk for many more hours now about books and podcasts and all the things. But yeah, I'm super excited for this to come out and for everyone to listen to this. Which I'm just realizing by the time the listener is listening to this, it will already be out. So anyways, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, George, for sharing your story and for coming on. And everyone else, I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.
Just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see around the corner soon.
This podcast has been recorded by your host, Liv. This podcast has been edited by my small but mighty Live Label Free team, and the beautiful song One Foot in Front of the Other that you are now listening to was written and recorded by my beautiful mom, Louise Alexandra. I am so grateful for my team and everyone who supports Live Label Free. Together, we are always stronger.